Coming up, we'll talk about what's pushing the restructuring in the Archdiocese of Detroit. Also, Michigan voters head to the polls and special events for the Solemnity of the Assumption. Plus your local news and weather. From Ave Maria Radio, this is Michigan Mornings Saturday.
This is Michigan Mornings Saturday on AM 990, Detroit. 105.5 FM Southfield, 107.9 FM Ann Arbor, AM 1390 Lansing, 105.7 FM Midland, AM 1440 Saginaw, and around the world at AveMariaRadio.net.
Well, good morning to you. This is Michigan Morning Saturday from Ave Maria Radio in the Ave Maria Radio app. This Saturday happens to be the 8th of August, and it's the memorial of St. Dominic. I'm Matthew Handley. Thanks for joining me. Good morning. We're going to talk to Brendan Hodge of The Pillar here in the second half of the program about some of the data that he's looking at, which is driving the restructuring in the Archdiocese of Detroit. We'll talk about that, plus some other items, but first, the news. The FDA is expanding its investigation into a cyclospora outbreak linked to a recalled iceberg lettuce after confirming the first two deaths connected to the illness. NBC's Maggie Vespa reports more than 6,300 cases have now been reported across 15 states, including deaths here in Michigan.
The damage rippling across the industry, with Salad and Go, a regional chain in Arizona and Nevada, filing for bankruptcy. In part, they say, because customers afraid of getting sick are avoiding lettuce.
Meanwhile, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services say residents can resume routine guidance on eating lettuce. MDHHS says the majority of contaminated products are likely no longer available. A recommendation to avoid bagged salads is also being lifted. More than 12,000 Michiganders were infected from the outbreak. ABC News says officials in Michigan, one of the newer states to report cyber attacks on water supply plants, are monitoring the situation and coordinating with federal partners.
We have to go and disconnect those, and we have to do a bit of a risk posture so that we understand which ones are vulnerable and which ones aren't.
That's Patrick Kelly, Chief Security Officer for Leargis Security, who says the effective systems largely rely on internet-connected systems that allow small staffs to operate remotely. There have been no reports here in Michigan of any disruptions to water supplies or wastewater treatment so far. Multiple reports cite U.S. officials who say the attacks may be linked to Iran. President Donald Trump is slamming Michigan's Democratic nominee for Senate. More from Mark Mayfield.
In a speech in Las Vegas Wednesday, Trump claimed Abdul el-Sayed hates Jewish people and hates Israel.
Abdul el-Sayed, lovely gentleman. He's a man of hate. And now he's going around saying, no, I love everybody. He doesn't love everybody. Put him in office. You're going to find out what he loves.
He went on to predict that el-Sayed will lose the November election. The progressive Democrat defeated establishment-backed Congresswoman Haley Stevens in Tuesday's closely watched contest. In the midterms, el-Sayed will face Republican Mike Rogers, who has Trump's backing. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Bishop Robert Gruss of the Diocese of Saginaw is urging the rights and dignity of immigrants to be respected amidst recent ICE operations in Saginaw. In a statement released last weekend, Bishop Gruss said there is a legitimate role of civil authorities to enforce the law, but the due process rights must remain in place, and that, quote, the power of the state must always be exercised within the limits of moral law. 9 men were arrested in Saginaw Township last week by ICE. A bipartisan group of 8 Michigan lawmakers is urging Congress to pass a bill that would restore nearly $2 billion a year in repairs and maintenance at public lands nationwide. The America the Beautiful Act would renew a federal fund used for projects at national parks, forests, and wildlife refuges. Supporters say the money could help repair roads, trails, and facilities at places including Sleeping Bear Dunes and Pictured Rocks. And the Diocese of Gaylord officially has a new patroness. This week, Bishop Jeffrey Walsh shared the Vatican's new decree designating Our Lady of Mount Carmel as the patroness for the northern Lower Michigan Diocese. In a statement, Bishop Walsh said, quote, although popularly acclaimed throughout the 55 years since the establishment of the Diocese of Gaylord in 1971, it was recently discovered that there never been a formal decree of our diocese being under the patronage of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. With due diligence, our former Director of Liturgy and Worship, Cameron Dicon, now in seminary formation for the Dominican Order, prepared the formal Vatican petition on my behalf, and we are happy to announce Rome's affirmative decision. In sports, the Detroit Lions have a new leader. The team has named Richard Haddad as its next president and CEO. Haddad, Chief Operating Officer at Pistons Sports and Entertainment, will join the Lions in early September and assume oversight of both football and business operations. That's your local news across the state. Now let's take a look at your local weather. In Detroit, expect a chance of thunderstorms this afternoon with highs around 86. Tomorrow will be mostly sunny with a high of 84. The rain returns on Monday with temperatures around 86. In Lansing, it will get sunnier as the day goes on, but we cannot rule out a chance of a thunderstorm. Our high will be 84. Tomorrow will be mostly sunny with a high of 84. Best chance for rain is on Monday with a high of 85. In Saginaw, expect a slight chance of showers in the early afternoon, and the high will be 85. Tomorrow, expect mostly sunny skies with a high of 85, and Monday, we may have rain and possibly a thunderstorm in the afternoon, temperatures around 85. And up in Marquette, we're having a nice day today, sunny skies with highs around 76. Tomorrow remains sunny with a high of 76, and Monday, we may see scattered showers with highs around 73. I'm Matthew Handley, and you're listening to Michigan Morning Saturday from Ave Maria Radio and the Ave Maria Radio app. Good morning. Thank you for joining me. Good morning. This is Michigan Morning Saturday from Ave Maria Radio and the Ave Maria Radio app. I'm Matthew Handley. It's August 8th, the Memorial of St. Dominic. Michigan had an important primary election on Tuesday night, and I want to take a few moments to break down some of the numbers. Now, the most watched race in the country on Tuesday night was the Michigan Democratic Senate primary, pitting Congresswoman Haley Stevens against progressive Abdul El-Sayed. Now, the polling ahead of this race showed a total blowout for El-Sayed. And the last couple of polls done ahead of the election by Emerson College and Wood TV, Mitchell Research, the Today Club, they all showed El-Sayed up by 8%, and a few of them up as much by 15%. There were polls done as well by legitimate polling groups that swung way in the other direction, too. A July poll from the Glengarriff Group and WDIV and the Detroit News had Haley Stevens up by 7%. Clearly, that didn't happen. We had a little bit of a nail-biter that didn't get called until early Wednesday morning by NBC News and then later in the morning by Decision Desk HQ. The final result was a very narrow margin of victory for Abdul El-Sayed. He pulled ahead by less than 1% of the vote, so it was 0.98%. That's how far ahead he was of Stevens. 1.5 million people voted in the Democratic primary in Michigan. More than 740,000 of them voted for El-Sayed, more than 725,000 voted for Stevens, and a handful of people still voted for Mallory McMorrow, despite the fact that she had dropped out several weeks ago. Now, early in the evening, things were not looking good for Haley Stevens. As I'm watching the map with the results coming in, I'm seeing areas that I would not ordinarily expect El-Sayed to do well. And he is, particularly here in the north. Now, El-Sayed easily won Washtenaw County, Kent County, Ingham County. These are all college areas. University of Michigan, Michigan State, and then over in Grand Rapids, you've got several colleges and universities in Grand Valley State. El-Sayed also won Grand Traverse County and Leelanau counties, which are very wealthy, generally more progressive areas. But here's where it gets interesting. El-Sayed did quite well in Chippewa County, Delta County, Menominee County, Dickinson County, Alger County, and Keweenaw County. These are all fairly sparsely populated areas in the Upper Peninsula, and they are not subject to be skewed by colleges. these are areas that I think Stevens should have done well in. Democrats north of the Zilwaukee Bridge tend to skew more to the center, and Stevens did quite well in northern lower Michigan. But the Upper Peninsula easily went to El Said. Now, what kind of Democrats do we have up here in the Upper Peninsula? We have miners. We have several active mines here in the UP that provide iron ore and copper, and one of the nation's only nickel mines is up here. In fact, one of them's in my backyard. We have a national mine here for Cleveland Cliffs Company. We've got farmers. We've got loggers. We've got people that work in the tourism industry. Not people you would ordinarily associate as someone who would be voting for someone who's adjacent to the Democratic Socialists. But it's what we're seeing is something that we're seeing nationwide from Democrats. It's an aversion to people who have been in the party for a long time. Stevens is the definition party establishment candidate. She was the only one that was supported by the Michigan Democratic Party. Governor Gretchen Whitmer came out and endorsed Stevens, as did former Senator Stabenow, current senator who they're running to replace Gary Peters. Stevens worked in the Michigan Democratic Party for years, and then she worked on the Clinton and Obama campaigns in 2008. And she worked in the Obama administration, then she ran for Congress. As I said, she's the definition of a party establishment candidate. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I just mean that that's who she was. She was the definition of a standard Democrat. El Said, on the other hand, campaigned on breaking the mold. Really, he took strategies from Trump's 2016 playbook. The Democratic establishment doesn't want me because I'm not going to listen to them. That was kind of how he was campaigning. He was looking around telling people, things are broken. These current establishment's not doing anything for you right now. You need someone that's going to go in and change the way things are. That's how El Said campaigned. And clearly it's a winning message. Clearly there's people who are fed up with the way politics is being done by the Democratic Party. So, of course, the question then becomes, what does this mean for the November election when El Said has to face former Congressman Mike Rogers? Well, looking at the polling, which I will admit I have already criticized, Rogers appears to have the slight advantage. Late July polls on hypothetical matchups were either a tie with El Said or had Rogers ahead by a handful of points. Clearly, El Said knew how to galvanize a base of voters and get them out to vote. I had mentioned with my conversation with Dr. Marcus Peter on Wednesday that Craig Mauger at the Detroit News had done some looking at this and found that there were 1.5 million Democrats voting in the gubernatorial election, while only 900,000 Republicans were. The Democratic gubernatorial election wasn't even a contest. Jocelyn Benson handily won that over Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson. Of course, El Said was one of the reasons for that, and this race here was one of the reasons for that, because it had gotten people out to go vote. But can he sway moderates and independents to come and vote for him instead of Mike Rogers? That's going to be the question. And if he's going to do that, he needs to back off some of his current positions. He's big on Medicare for All. He's endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He's campaigned with Democratic Socialists. One of the issues I know that came up frequently on election night coverage was the fact that he thinks that we should not be selling any military aid to Israel. Not just putting conditions on aid, which would be a pretty standard, I think, Democratic policy right now, but completely banning aid, military aid and weapon sales to Israel. So can he translate that into convincing moderates to vote for him? Given the way the Upper Peninsula broke for El Said, I think he has a better shot than what I ordinarily would have expected, because he was able to galvanize some of those more moderate Democrats to turn around and vote for him instead of Haley Stevens. And what you're probably going to have happen is a lot of Democrats that are going to be galvanized by the fact that they don't want another Republican in the Senate seat. They don't want someone who's going to vote pretty much along with what Trump wants to do. And so if they're smart about it, they're going to go try and campaign on that. Rogers, on his hand, he has his work cut out for him. All he needs to do is remind independents and Republicans that El Sayed is democratic socialist adjacent. And I've used that intentionally because El Sayed has repeatedly said he's not a democratic socialist, but he campaigns with them. And so clearly democratic socialists think that he's going to advance their agenda in some particular way. The advantage that El Sayed also has heading into November is that Jocelyn Benson is the gubernatorial nominee. She easily won her primary night on Tuesday night, and there were no counties that Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson won. Every single county in Michigan in the Democratic primary went for Jocelyn Benson. She, of course, has lots of name recognition, being the Secretary of State, and then also her other work as a politician in Lansing. Polling, again, taken with a grain of salt, has her heavily ahead of Republican nominee John James. And so John James also needs to overcome the fact that he has not won a statewide race. And so the lineup on the Republican side with John James running for governor and Mike Rogers running for Senate, they're going to have to figure out a way to convince those same moderates and independents that El Sayed and Benson are going to be campaigning for to break for them. Now, fortunately, I think most moderates and independents here in Michigan are going to have a harder time voting for someone like Abdul El Sayed. I don't think they're going to have a problem voting for Jocelyn Benson. But you're going to see, this is going to be a real vicious campaign, both at the Senate level and then at the gubernatorial level as well. Now, if Benson wins in November, that is going to solidify a blue Michigan for a while. The last time a governor here in Michigan was succeeded by a governor of the same party was 1969. That's when William Milliken succeeded George Romney. And since then, the governors have alternated between Republican and Democrat. And so if Benson breaks that mold and becomes the first governor since 1969 to be of the same party of the previous governor, I think that the Democrats will have a solid hold on Michigan going into at least the next few future elections. Now, I want to hear from you. I want to hear what your thoughts were on primary night this week and where you think the general election is going in November. You can reach out to me by emailing me. My email is matthew@mhmediaventures.com. You can connect with me on X. I'm at Radio Handley, or you can go to my website, purplecatholic.com, and leave a comment there. Stay with us here on Michigan Morning Saturday. Coming up, we're talking about the demographics of the Archdiocese of Detroit and what it means for their restructuring process. Don't go anywhere.
This is Franciscan Father Greg Friedman for the Catholic Communication Campaign with a message about faithful citizenship. Our political debates are sometimes more like a war of words. Exchanges on talk radio and in blogs are often vicious and not always truthful. The gospel challenges us to confront contemporary issues in the light of gospel truth and charity. The U.S. bishops are calling for civility in politics. Do your part to bring Christian charity to the public arena. Go to faithfulcitizenship.org.
Welcome back to Michigan Morning Saturday. I'm Matthew Handley. It is August 8th. Today's the memorial of St. Dominic. Good morning. The Solemnity of the Assumption is next Saturday, and the Assumption Grotto in Detroit is inviting you to a special celebration. Throughout the day, the faithful are invited to participate in masses, Eucharistic adoration, confession, and more. Alongside these spiritual devotions, families can enjoy fellowship, food, and fun parish activities in a festive atmosphere centered on honoring our Blessed Mother and growing closer to her Son, Jesus Christ. Jeff Parlow spoke to Marcus Peter on Ave Maria in the afternoon this week about the upcoming events.
Assumption Grotto, it's located in the city of Detroit, is the second oldest parish in the city, originally founded by German settlers. I would probably argue it's probably more Italian today, but became an official parish in 1847-ish. It wasn't originally devoted to the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It was originally a St. Mary's at first. But a pastor, late 1800s, traveled to Lourdes France and went to the grotto there and was so impressed that he came back and he built a small replica of it in the cemetery behind the church. We would eventually, the parish would eventually be, designated the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary Parish. It is just affectionately today called Assumption Grotto. And we have always, maintained our dedication to Our Lady. So it's a little quick history of the church. We've been very blessed down there. It's a great parish, great people, very pious, learned priests. It's just a great place, Assumption Grotto.
So share with us why the parish's name got transformed into Assumption Grotto. It takes on a particular spirituality and expression. Share with us what that is like.
So like I said, it was not originally dedicated to the Assumption. That would come a little bit later, but we have great affection for Mary, the Mother of God. Obviously, she, we believe she can intercede for us on our behalf with her Son, and we have all sorts of Marian programs down at Assumption Grotto because of this. Obviously, August 15th, the Feast of the Assumption, the Solemnity of the Assumption, very important to us, not just to the whole church, but to us as a parish, and it is a day filled with just spirituality. It's not, we sometimes call it our festival, but it's not a festival as we think about it today. There's no games and rides and so forth. It is wholly a spiritual day, masses, adoration, etc. To ask our mother to intercede for us on whatever case we may need it to be done. And so I think with everything going on in the world today, that's vitally needed. Although I could probably say as Catholics, we've probably said that from the very beginning, that every day is we've needed Mary to intercede for us. But yeah.
If you could share with us an idea of what the whole day is going to look like. I know you already highlighted a few things, Masses, Eucharist, and Adoration. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, the day starts at 6:30 a.m. We have a Mass inside the church. That is the only, weather permitting, it is the only Mass inside the church that day. We also have a used religious items sale that opens up in the morning. We offer candles, Lourdes water from Lourdes that day as well. The grotto out and back is a shrine itself. You can enroll yourself or others into the shrine so that you'll be prayed for at masses. There's a bake sale. Our first rosary is at 9 o'clock a.m. outdoors in the grotto in the cemetery. The Assumption Grotto's gift shop is pretty well known. That opens up at 9 a.m. They have all sorts of items, books and rosaries and artwork and crucifixes and you name it. Our second Mass is then at 9:30 a.m. That is a Latin Novus Ordo Mass in the grotto outdoors under the trees in the cemetery. Then around 11 a.m., the Blessed Sacrament is exposed in the church. Confessions are available. Another rosary outdoor at the grotto. The Knights of Columbus will be throwing a grill, basically. They'll be offering hot dogs, hamburgers, bratwurst, and sides throughout the remainder of the day. There's a kids' crafts tent to keep children occupied if necessary. Then another English Mass at 12 o'clock outdoors at the grotto, weather permitting. Also blessing of herbs and miraculous medals. There's a procession of the Blessed Sacrament from the church to the grotto at 3 p.m. Anointing of the sick occurs at that time, and benediction. Scapular enrollment we have that day as well. And then things, start closing up about 6 o'clock, and then our final Latin Novus Ordo Mass under the trees, kind of at night at the grotto in the cemetery. Sort of closes the evening, followed then by a Lord's candlelight procession. So, and that's the day.
That sounds like a truly beautiful day. So, in essence, a family could, there's going to be food there and everything. So a family could just come there and spend a whole day, have a kind of family retreat, and spend the day in leisure, but also have a spiritual day of rejuvenation for the families. Share with us what that experience is going to be like for families.
Yeah, well, so I always suggest coming down to the grotto for the spirituality. But you are correct. We do offer other things, and parish is not just about worship. A parish is a community, and I always say come down and spend time with your fellow Catholics if you've never been there, or it's been some time since you've been there. Obviously the experience is different for everyone. We're all in need of something different. We offer those opportunities to meet those differences as best as possible. But whether it's a mass or a rosary or just praying at the grotto, the Pope Leo XIII had issued a proclamation in 1882 that anyone who came to Assumption Grotto and prayed at the grotto for the propagation of the faith would receive a plenary indulgence. So, there's just all sorts of different ways for you to grow in your love of Mary and of Christ. It will be different for everyone, as it should be, because we're all in need of different things. So,
and so for all of the listeners listening right now, just share with us in terms of practicality. Are there registrations? Like, what can people do to find out more about the event, about the grotto itself, and even if they want to get involved?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, AssumptionGrotto.com, there's a flyer and a schedule of events up there. It is open to everyone. There's no registrations. Come when you can come throughout the day. Come and leave and come back if you want. If you would like to help out, there are volunteer forms on the website, or you can just call the parish rectory. If you would like to financially contribute towards the day, you can do that as well. There's a form online. The parish is located on Gratiot Avenue, 13770 Gratiot Avenue. It's on the east side of Gratiot, between 6.5 and 7 Mile Road. I can't really miss it.
Tune in to Ave Maria in the afternoon, weekdays at 4 p.m. on Ave Maria Radio and anytime with the Ave Maria Radio app. More Michigan Morning Saturday after this. Welcome back to Michigan Morning Saturday. It's August 8th. Today is the memorial of St. Dominic. Here are the top stories we're following. Democrat Abdul El-Sayed will be facing off against Republican Mike Rogers for Michigan Senate seat in November. Republican John James will face Democrat Jocelyn Benson for governor. In weather across the state, expect highs in the mid to upper 80s in the lower peninsula and mid 70s in the north. The Archdiocese of Detroit is in the midst of a parish restructuring process, in no small part because of the area's changing demographics. Brendan Hodge of The Pillar joined me to discuss those numbers. Brendan is a professional pricer and has spent the last 20 years holding pricing and data analytics roles in a variety of companies, including Dell, Wendy's, and Scott's Miracle-Gro. His novel, If You Can Get It, was published in 2020 by Ignatius Press. He has lectured at the Professional Pricing Society, covered economics for the Sunrise Morning Show, and blogs at Darwin Catholic. He's also a contributing editor at The Pillar, and he joins me now. Brendan, thank you for being with me.
Thanks. Great to be on with you.
I want to talk about your article, Motor City Blues, that you published last week in The Pillar. You're highlighting demographic changes in the Archdiocese of Detroit, much of which are fueling the current restructuring process. And one of the primary data sets you're looking at is funerals to infant baptism ratios. What is that, and why is that an important data set?
Yeah, so that is a metric which parishes and dioceses often look at in order to understand basically whether a parish is setting itself up for growth or not. Um, the parish has to record major events that happen in the lives of the faithful, and the beginning and end of that cycle is infant baptism, where children are baptized into the faith, and then funeral, where one of the faithful is prepared for burial. And parishes where you have more funerals than you have baptisms are parishes which are shrinking because you have more people who are leaving than who are coming in at that sort of basic level. Whereas parishes that have more baptisms than funerals are parishes that are growing. And so one of the things that the Archdiocese of Detroit looked at in assessing both the demographic health of the diocese and of individual parishes is where there were more baptisms than there were funerals, and where there were funerals that were predominating.
And what are we seeing in the Archdiocese of Detroit?
So the Archdiocese of Detroit is like a lot of kind of the core heartland of American Catholicism. It has seen over the last 60 years a consistent decrease in the number of baptisms. They saw their peak back in 1960, and it's been dropping pretty steadily ever since. Their peak in the number of funerals actually was a while ago, too. That was back in 1990. So they are actually seeing a decrease even in the number of people who are dying within the diocese. Some of that is because of the diocese getting smaller, and some of it is because when people fall away completely from the faith, they're not even buried through the rites of the church. But what they've seen is that over the last 10 years in the Archdiocese, the number of funerals for the Archdiocese as a whole is now larger than the number of baptisms. And that actually puts them in company with 58 other dioceses around the U.S. And if you look at where those are, it's pretty much all through New England, the Northeast, and the upper Midwest, up there in Michigan and Wisconsin.
And I'll note that where I live in the Diocese of Marquette, that it's worse off in your ratio that you've got here than what the Archdiocese of Detroit is, as well as in Michigan, Diocese of Gaylord and Saginaw both are in that red color that you've got here on the map, whereas Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Lansing, they're in the blue. So if looking at the map here, and I'll make sure we got this posted in the show notes as well so people can take a look at it. The diocese you see in blue, that's the instance where you've got more infant baptisms than funerals, correct?
Correct, yeah. Those are dioceses where you have more people coming into the church through baptism than leaving through rite of Christian burial.
And so as you noted, looking at these 58 dioceses, they're mostly in the northeast and in the Midwest. Is it a result of population decline generally in those areas, or is there something else that's dry, or is it just more that there's more people moving? Because I grew up in North Carolina. We had a lot of Mexican immigrants in North Carolina, most of which were Catholic. So is it more a result of immigration into other areas, or people leaving those other dioceses?
It's a bit of each.
Okay.
So if you look at both the South and the West Coast, those are areas where you have a lot of immigration into the U.S., and the immigrants that we get in the U.S. are more Catholic than the sort of U.S. average. So the U.S. average population between 20 and 25% Catholic, depending on how you ask about it. And when we have immigrants who are coming in from Central and South America, they're not actually sort of as predominantly Catholic as the reputation goes. There are an awful lot of people who are secular or who are evangelical in Central and South America now, but they are majority Catholic. And so you've got 60% or so of the people coming into the U.S. from that part of the world are Catholic, and so you have a lot of that with immigration. The other thing that you're seeing really is migration within the U.S. So the overall trend in U.S. demographics is that people have been moving out of a lot of the areas of the Midwest and the more rural parts of the Northeast. They've been moving into big metropolitan areas, so Boston, New York, D.C., Dallas, and they've been moving into just more generally the South. And so the areas that have been growing a lot are places like Georgia, North and South Carolina, Texas. You see the diocese in those areas benefiting from migration within the U.S. And so, an area like the Carolinas had very, very few Catholics if you go back 50 years ago, because it just wasn't a very Catholic part of the country. And as you have people moving down there from the Midwest and the Northeast, those are areas where there were much higher concentrations of Catholics. As those people move there for jobs and raise their kids there, often their parents and grandparents are still back in the Northeast and Midwest. So you're going to see the burial of those older Catholics who are staying in those sort of Catholic heartland regions of the U.S., but their grandkids, if they are still Catholic, are going to be baptized down in the South or the West.
Okay. Looking back at the Archdiocese of Detroit, you noted in your analysis here the difference between different parishes. Can you break that down a little bit more?
Yeah, so within the diocese, there is sort of a variety of different conditions in different parishes. And really there are two things. One is you do have some parishes that are still growing, and these are mostly in the more suburban areas of the Archdiocese. So you have parishes there where you do still see growth, and you are seeing more baptisms than funerals. And then you have a lot of parishes which are in the more rural or very sort of inner urban areas of the Archdiocese, where there are just very few mass goers left. And so one of the ways that we broke it down is we looked at parishes in terms of how many people are showing up for Mass on the average weekend. And there are parishes where you have less than 250 people between all Masses. There are parishes where you have 250 to 1,000, and then you have parishes where there are greater than 1,000. And a lot of those parishes where you have greater than 1,000 are the ones where you actually have a bit more growth, and you have a better ratio of baptisms to funerals, whereas it's those smaller parishes often that are also the ones which are seeing more funerals than baptisms.
You know, and I'm sure you've heard this too. I've heard people say, you know, well, these parishes that have more people or are gaining more people, it's tied to, you know, liturgy or whatever it is that they're doing there. Is there data that actually supports that, or is it more just where people are moving to in general?
So I'd say that overall, the biggest pattern is that the parishes that are growing are the ones that are in more suburban areas, ones that are just demographically growing. But one of the things that we did see, and if you look even in some of the urban areas, you will see that there are certain parishes that are doing fairly well in terms of the ratio of baptisms to funerals, and are doing pretty well in terms of their financials. And one of the things that the Archdiocese also looked at was what percentage of the people who are attending that parish are from within the geographical bounds of the parish versus those who are outside. And so for some of these urban parishes that are still thriving, they have upwards of 70% of their people who are attending Mass there are from outside the geographical parish. And a couple of those, I did do some searching about where the Latin Mass was available in Detroit up until recently, when I know that there was some changes in where traditional worship was allowed. So a couple of those, which are in more urban areas but had been offering a more traditional liturgy, did look like they were in sort of a healthier condition. It can obviously be a little hard to know exactly what is the draw in specific parishes, but there is sort of a trend of the urban parishes that are doing well. They're often doing well because there are people who are traveling in there. It's not because of people in the neighborhood.
And I've thought too, and I don't know if you have any numbers on this too. You've got a number of parishes there in the Archdiocese of Detroit that are both national historic sites, but also pilgrimage sites, like the Shrine of the Little Flower, the Basilica of St. Anne. And so I, you know, again, if you don't have numbers on it, that's fine. But I wonder how some of that plays into it too, just the historicity and the interest of the parish building, not just the building, but the community that's been there for a while as well. But if that's not something you have numbers on, that's fine. I know I'm throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's not something that I have numbers right in front of me on, but I think, I mean, there are a number of different things that can be a draw, which explain why people come to a parish which otherwise would not be their nearest.
Right. You note in here that the percentage of registered Catholics attending weekly Mass, it looks to me to be somewhat steady. That ranges between 14 and 17%. But you also have noted the number of registered Catholics is declining, which goes back to that funeral to baptism ratio. How has that affected overall weekly Mass attendance there in the Archdiocese?
Yeah, so what the Archdiocese has seen is that there has been a pretty significant drop in the number of Catholics who are showing up to Mass each week over the last 13 years. So they showed data from 2011 through 2024. Back in 2011, on an average weekend, the Archdiocese was seeing 231,000 Catholics, and that has dropped by almost 100,000. Has dropped to 139,000 in 2024. And by 2024, I'd say, if we were talking about 21 or 22, you'd be talking about kind of lingering effects of COVID. But what we have been seeing on a number of metrics, the church has been actually picking up over the last few years. So I think that is, we're sort of back on our legitimate trend, and it had been a steady drop from 2011 to 2015 to 2019 to 2024. So the number of Catholics who are attending is down by about 40% over that time. And if you look at the number of Catholics who are registered in the diocese, it's fallen by about a similar rate during that time. So it's not that the Catholics who are within Detroit are attending Mass less. That rate has been about 15%. But it's that there are simply fewer Catholics in the Archdiocese.
And I think that data set you mentioned is important, too, because 2011 is well after Detroit's population implosion, when you had a lot of people just immediately leave after the 2008 financial crisis. So to see that the population of the area has grown since then, but the number of Catholics is decreasing, is certainly a matter of concern. It's interesting. I mentioned the map that you have on here. Ave Maria Radio is headquartered in Diocese of Lansing. There's very vibrant Catholic areas like Ann Arbor, and then there's areas where they've had to merge parishes like Flint. I mentioned I live in Diocese of Marquette, which, looking at your map, is one of the worst ranked in the country looking at this ratio. And I generally imagine, as you had mentioned, it goes with the population decline we see here in the Upper Peninsula. So in dioceses like mine, where we see that decline, and we haven't really had a real grappling yet with needing to do something like the Archdiocese of Detroit's doing, do you think it's something that we should be mentally and spiritually preparing for if we're living in a diocese where our ratio is that high?
So I think the biggest question that really pushes a diocese over the point where they have to take actions is the fact that there are fewer Catholics showing up in each parish is one factor. The other thing, which is about to hit Detroit very hard, and which is another thing which a lot of dioceses will be dealing with, is that they're about to hit a demographic cliff in terms of the number of priests that they have available. Mm-hmm. So they've got some data in here about the age breakdown of their priests. They've got 224 active priests in the diocese right now, but they're expecting that over the coming years, that number is going to drop pretty rapidly to 116. And the reason is because of those 224, only 116 are under 60. So if you consider that most priests are going to retire between 70 and 80, over the next 15 years, they're going to see about half of their priests retire. And on the flip side, when you look at the number of priests who are under 40, that number is only 31. And they're only ordaining about 3 new priests a year. So the rate at which the ordaining priest is just not replacing the rate at which they're going to be retiring over the next 15 years. And it's not going to stabilize until they're at a much lower number. And at that point, if you are going to continue to celebrate all the masses that are currently being celebrated in the Archdiocese, the average priest would be celebrating 5 masses a weekend. Wow. And not only would that be exhausting, that's canonically, it's against canon law. A priest is not supposed to celebrate that many masses.
Yeah, I took a look at that just to confirm in my mind what the number was this year. It looked like it was 4 this year, and I think back to my own diocese here in Marquette. We had 3, and we're nowhere near the population that they had in Detroit. But I did hear, at least anecdotally, from another priest I spoke with last week. He said, at least up here in Marquette, the bishop thinks the number's about at 75% replacement is where we're at with the number of seminarians and younger priests, but Detroit clearly, and just given its size, doesn't have that number. And this may be a little bit outside of the purview of what you're looking at, but what does a bishop do in that instance, short of closing parishes?
Well, I mean, I think they're really kind of they're two things. At a basic level, they need either to increase their number of priests pretty rapidly, or they need to find a way to get by with fewer masses. So there are some dioceses where they create kind of parish families. So there will be 2 or 3 different parishes which are lumped together, and on a given weekend there might only be mass in one of those 3 buildings, but they're sort of moving between buildings in terms of where mass is celebrated. So that's kind of a soft consolidation, if you will. Without actually closing parishes officially. And then the other is the combination of either trying to increase ordinations, or bishops will sometimes try to recruit priests from outside the U.S. So what we see these days a lot is recruiting priests from Africa, and usually that's a combination of the Africa is producing a lot of vocations, and the dioceses in Africa are often in a lot of need of money. So sometimes dioceses will come to a deal where they will provide some funding for the diocese back in Africa, and the diocese in Africa will send several priests to come serve in the U.S. So we do have kind of a priest exchange of sorts, and that's something which has a long history in the U.S. I mean, if you go back 50, 60 years, it was priests from Ireland, and maybe sort of in the middle term there, you got a lot of priests from places like the Philippines, and these days the place where you see a lot of those vacations is in Africa.
Well, and even just thinking of the history of our country, Marquette's diocese was founded by a Slovenian missionary, so having priests from other countries, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, and can certainly teach us and expose us to more than sometimes when we get sheltered here in the U.S.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, on the vocation side, I mean, one of the dioceses that shows this very red is Steubenville, which has almost 2 funerals for every baptism. But despite the fact that the area is depopulating just as a diocese, they have a very strong vocations history. And so one of the things that they've been saying is there's been some discussion of actually consolidating that diocese into the Diocese of Columbus. Is they actually have a much better rate of vocations than Columbus does. And so they're saying, yes, we may have our population shrinking, but we're able to staff our churches. And so in a sense, why worry?
And I know the Pillar's done a fair amount of reporting on that. Do you have any idea of what any of the movement is on that right now?
I think one of the things that is waiting to be seen is what the approach of the new nuncio will be.
Sure.
Our prior nuncio kind of saw the consolidation as a project of his. He is now retired, and so I think a lot will have to do with how the new nuncio thinks about it, and how the broader conference thinks about it, because it is something where the diocese, and I know several priests and deacons in the diocese, that's where I went to college, feel very strongly that they are their own separate region, and they would like to remain independent, and that they have at least the vocation support to do so, that they are struggling financially in some ways. And so I think the question will be sort of whether they are used as a test case on diocese consolidation, or they're allowed to keep going independently.
Got it. Well, Brendan Hodge, I appreciate you joining me very much, and I'll make sure that your article here in the Pillar, Motor City Blues, is linked. And, of course, everyone that looks for good Catholic journalism, check out the Pillar. They're doing good work there. Brendan Hodge, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Brendan Hodge is a contributing editor at The Pillar. We'll have the link to this article in the show notes of today's program. I'm Matthew Andley. This is Michigan Morning Saturday. More after this. Welcome back to Michigan Morning Saturday. I'm Matthew Handley. Hebrews says, "Remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider how their lives ended and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Do not be carried away by all kinds of strange teaching." Looking at our liturgical calendar this week, we're into the 19th Sunday in Ordinary Time tomorrow. On Monday, we celebrate the Feast of St. Lawrence, Deacon and Martyr. Tuesday, we celebrate the Memorial of St. Clare. Friday is the Memorial of St. Maximilian Kolbe, Priest and Martyr. And on Saturday, we celebrate the Solemnity of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. I want to thank you very much for joining me on Michigan Morning Saturday. You can find articles about all the items we talked about today by going to my website, purplecatholic.com, and clicking on today's episode. Don't forget, you can also contact me there or on X. I'm at Radio Handley. Stay tuned to Ave Maria Radio. Colleen Kelly Mast is coming up next. She's got some free, friendly advice from a Catholic perspective. I'm Matthew Handley. Lord willing, I'll talk to you on Monday during Morning Offering. Goodbye.